In CIST chapter 1530, chapter 3, we're going to look at working with layers. In Photoshop, working with layers is going to be one of the most important skills you learn. So we'll start by looking first over into the layers panel area. So in our panel, you'll see our layers tab. Then you'll see the individual layers. These layers are going to be the individual parts of that image that you have on the screen. Now we're going to look at briefly at some of the parts of the layers. I'm going to expand this to make it a little more visible. Okay, so when we look at our layers, first we'll see that we have a background layer. These padlock icons means that I cannot change any of those pixels. I can click on that to unlock that layer, or I can also choose different options under the lock option here to lock the pixels, the transparent pixels, lock the visible pixels, lock the positioning, or I can use the lock all. Next, you'll see thumbnails for the items that are on that layer. Then the layer name, blue globe, gold globe, pink globe. I do recommend that you name your layers. And you can name a layer by double clicking on the names and typing in the new layer name. Next, this you'll see a eyeball icon that's going to show your whether the layer is visible. Working with layers, you do have some other options here. First thing I can't stress enough is to make sure that you have the layer that you want to work on selected when you're working on it. So for example, I'm going to work on the gold globe, this layer here. And one of the things I'm going to do is I'm going to change the opacity of this globe. So that means how much can I see through it? And you see right here above this, I do have some different blending modes I can choose, and you can get a live preview of how changing the blending modes will change the way your image looks. But next, this is the opacity. So I'm going to adjust this. When it's 100%, it means that image is fully on the screen. Okay, so I cannot see through it. And when I have it down to 0%, it's fully transparent. And you can see how you can adjust the opacity and will change the way your image looks. Also, how it's going to look when you work with the different blending modes as well. Now you see I have multiple layers. There are times when I will want to combine all of these layers into one layer. Now there's a couple of things I can do with this. I can hold down Shift or Control. If it's if I want to choose like the blue globe and everything between the blue globe and the pink globe, I can hold down Shift and click. Or if I want to choose just the blue and the pink, I can hold Control and click. That allows me to select multiple layers at once. I can come up to Layer. And then also down here, I have the options here to merge my layers. Uh, the current options I have now is to merge the visible. That's going to take all of my visible layers and make it into one layer. So you'll see here that now everything is into one layer. I can also choose to flatten an image, which is going to do the same thing, except it's going to get rid of the layers here. So if I flatten the image, it's going to ask me if I want to discard the hidden layers. So what that means is that pink glow that I have hidden, it's going to be thrown away. So if I do this, you'll see that this is now all into one layer. If I have multiple layers selected, I can come into merge layers, and now the blue and pink layer globes are on one layer, but everything else retains its own layer. You can make copies of layers. The blue globe, for example, if I need more blue globes, I can right click in the layers panel with that layer selected and choose to duplicate layer. This brings up my duplicate layer dialog box where I can give it a name. Click OK. And now you see that I have multiple blue globes. Now, if I decide I need to delete the layer, I can click on the layer and drag it to the trash can icon. It'll allow me to delete that layer. I can also copy the layers. Let's see, I have the blue globe selected, so I just hit Control C, and then Control V will paste in new layers. Now I can also task here and delete a lot of these layers at once by doing the clicking on the one layer, holding down Shift and clicking on the top layer, and then dragging those layers as one, and I can delete multiple layers at one time. So layers are a very powerful, very useful tool with Photoshop. There's a lot of different skills you can do with layers. One of those includes loading a selection from a layer. So for this example, I'm going to open up another project here. So we'll open up this image here, and we're going to work with this couple image here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to make a shadow of this, or outline of this layer that will work as kind of a background for this. So with the layer selected, I'm going to hold down Control and click on the layer thumbnail. You'll see that I have this box that appeared around that image. That is, I'll have selected that image. I'm going to go to Select, and then I'm going to use Save Selection. And I can give this a name. I'm just going to name it Shadow. And click OK. So let's see how I can use that now. So I'm going to create a new layer. And I'm going to hit the wrong button. And here I'm going to come in and I'm going to load the selection. This is why I say make sure you're on the right layer. So you see that I can make copies of this by using the selection. I use the keyboard command for Control C to make a copy of that layer. Let me make my layer again. So to use this as a loading a selection from a layer, I'm going to have this layer selected. I am going to select the thumbnail for this. So then we'll go to Select. And when I come to select, this is where I can modify. I can work with my selections. So for this example, I'm going to modify the feather. I'm going to put it at a radius of 6. We're going to put it back at 4. So I want my default colors on this case to be black and white. So I would hit D on my keyboard to make sure that I am on the black and white. Now I want to fill this selection with the image. So to do this, I'm going to hold down Alt and I'm going to press Delete on my keyboard. And so now I've filled that selection with the foreground color of black. I'm going to deselect this area. Now I'm going to nudge this. So I'm going to just move this down 3 pixels. So I'm going to hold down Shift and I'm going to hit the down arrow on my keyboard 3 times to move this down and over 3 pixels. So now you see I've got the outline around from the layer behind this. One thing that I want to point out here, though, this is an important thing of layers. Layers can really affect your image based on the layer order. So your layers are read from top to bottom. So you see right now that this black layer is completely blocking out the image of the couple. So to fix this, I would need to drag this layer underneath this couple. That allows me to adjust so that they are visible, but I can still see the 3 pixel area where I move this layer down. Then adjusting the opacity will allow it to not be so harsh. So I can now see through it. So now it looks more like a shadow than it did before I changed the opacity. So we're going to go back to the globes. One other thing we can do is we can transform our artwork. So the way we can do this, there's a couple of ways we can transform. First, we got to make sure that we have the layer selected that we want to transform. In this case, I'm going to transform the blue globe. Now I can go to my transform tool by using Control T. A couple things here, you'll see a bounding box with these 8 sizing handles that will appear around it. And you'll notice that my mouse pointer changes, and your mouse pointer will change as your mouse moves around the image. For right now, I am set to rotate, where if I click and drag, it's going to rotate this. When I have the double arrow, it allows me to change the size of my image, and depending on where I'm at, we'll adjust the height and width independently if you have the legacy transform selected. So we'll take a second and look at the legacy transform. If you come up to edit and down to preferences and then general, in this box you will see that I have the use legacy free transform checked. So I'm going to turn this off and we'll look at what happens if I have it turned off. So now, just using my mouse, when I come to one of the side here, let me lock that back on. So with the aspect ratio locked, so when I come to one of the sides handles, I'm adjusting both the height and the width to maintain the same proportion. For years, Photoshop, you had to hold down the shift key with Photoshop to get this to work. They have recently changed that to where now the shift key does the opposite. So now if I hold the shift key, I can adjust only the height and width. So if I want to keep this to where the height and width act separately of each other, I would come to Edit, Preferences, General, and I want to make sure the Use Legacy Free Transform is selected. That allows me to change the height and width independently. It is a good idea to go ahead and get used to using the new way, to where you can transform the scale of an object and it maintains the same aspect ratio, and using the shift key to basically use the legacy. So going back to the control T, I put the bounding box around my image. I can rotate an image. You can also flip the image using your bounding box by adjusting the sizing handles on the sides or the top. You can flip the image. You also see that if you go to edit, you have a free transform command that's going to give you those options, the same as hitting Control T. You also see you have some transforming options in here. So this is where you can transform items independently. So I can tell it to just scale an item, just rotate. I can skew an item, which allows me to adjust the view of an item, the skew. You have some other options in here. I can rotate an item 180 degrees. I can also do this clockwise and counterclockwise 90 degrees. Or I can flip this horizontal and vertical. So those are many different ways that you can transform an image. One thing I want to point out now is this icon here is when you've got a bounding box around your image, that's your point of origin. So that's from where the transformation is going to take place. If you do not see this when you are transforming, if you come up to the upper left-hand part of your option bar, you'll see a little box that will have these squares around it and this check mark. This check mark turns that point of origin on and off. It hides it. Now, the point of origin, you can change it. So I can remove my point of origin and change from where the transformation takes place. As you can see with the rotation. So there's a lot of different ways you can transform. Use the transform tools to manipulate your image and to change the way it looks. Remember, Control T is your keyboard shortcut for transformations. Okay, next we're going to look at incorporating layer styles. Layer styles are you can add to your image. I'm going to come back to the image of these couples trips to Rome to look at layer styles. And you'll see that some of these already have layer styles turned on. As you'll see the word effect and then whatever layer style is under it. So to add a layer style, we'll come back. I'll just move the globe over. You can use the little FX icon at the bottom of your layer panel, or you can simply double left click in one of the open spaces. And this is going to open up your layer style dialog box. Now in here, you'll have a lot of different options. You can set the bevel and emboss, and you'll just click the check marks to turn these on. One thing to make sure that you have that option selected, and you'll see the options for that. And as you see, you can adjust these, and however you adjust them will affect your image and change the way your image looks. For example, stroke is going to put basically you can put an outline around your image. You can change your color. You can put an outer glow around your image. You have a lot of different options you can work with in the layer styles. These plus signs will allow you to add multiple instances of that layer. So I'm going to increase some of these layer styles to make them a little dramatic here. Click OK, and you'll see that I have the layer styles applied to that layer. The icon, the eyeball icon, will allow me to turn on the visibility on and off for that layer style. If I want to change the layer style, I just double click on the layer name. It opens up my layer style dialog box, which allows me to go in and I can add more layer styles or work with changing those layers. I can also copy layer styles between layers. So let's say I've got this on the blue globe and I decide I want to think it'd look better on the pink globe. I can click the effects and just drag it and drop it to that globe or to that layer. If I want to copy that, I hold down Alt and drag the desired layer styles to the new layer. You see I can do that with individual layers, layer styles I mean, to put them on the individual layers. So just because I have all these layer styles applied to this layer and I want to copy them does not mean I have to copy everything. And if I want to remove a layer style, I can drag these to the trash can, or if I want to turn them off, I simply click on the eyeball effect to turn those off. Okay, layer mask. Let me turn this off. Layer masks are not a non-destructive way to remove pixels. So if I come in and use the eraser tool and I start erasing pixels, I have destroyed those pixels. I've erased them. I can still hide those pixels by using a layer mask. Now, the first thing to do when I create a layer mask, I need to make my selection. Okay, so this one I'm going to use the object selection tool. I'm just going to make my selection. Now I have the options down here on the layer panel to add a layer mask. So you'll see that when I do this, a new thumbnail is applied to that layer. You'll see it's black and white. So the black part is hiding the pixels. The white part is what is revealed. So you'll see that on the layer thumbnail that I have the white area. That is what you can still see. The black is what has been hidden. I can adjust this by going to my brush tool. And if I want to reveal pixels by having this selected, here's the right thing selected. I can paint over this. If I want to remove, I paint over with black. Now, a couple things with the layer mask. I can drag this layer mask to the trash can. It'll ask me if I want to apply this. If I apply it, I'm basically flattening this image. I'm committing that layer mask to that one layer. In this case, I'm going to hit cancel because I'm not through working with the layer mask. Now with this, I can still come in and add layer styles. Sometimes this is a nice little helpful thing. If you do this temporarily, you can see where you may have left something like this, where I've got an item here. If I want to turn the layer mask off, I hold down Shift and click on the layer. And if I shift click again to turn that layer mask back on. Once again, if I want to delete the layer mask, I just drag it to the trash can and tell it to delete. And we'll delete that layer mask. So the layer mask can also be used to mask out a background image. The example for this, in this case, let's say I want to background mask out this bowl, and I only want the bowl itself to be seen. So once again, I just make a selection, and then I'm going to create a mask. So I've just created a mask. Those layers are still there. Those pixels are still there, I mean, and they're just now hidden. Another thing I can do with my layer is I can look at the canvas size. So I'm going to zoom out on this. So with the canvas size, I can come up to image and choose canvas size. So I'll see that this image, this canvas is 7 inches wide by 5 inches tall. If I need to adjust this image, so in here I can add a plus. If I want to add 50, I hit enter. So now you see that the width has been expanded. And I can also do this for the height as well. So now I've expanded my canvas. Now, one of the things I can do with this, I can use this as to fill this area with a different color to create a border. I can use this to expand the size of my image. So if I have an example of this, the black space, and I want to expand it, I can. So there's a lot of different things I can do to change this. So I'm going to undo the canvas size change. Now we'll look at that bleeding an image off of a canvas. So if I wanted this globe to be down in this lower corner here, so if I'm going to go up to, I know that there's rest of this image here. If I want to see this, I can come up to image and reveal all. So it's going to show me the edges of my canvas area. So if I want to make sure, say this area here is visible, I can use that to precisely place the image as I want it in there. This allows me to put these images exactly where I want them, and I can see what is bleeding off of the canvas. And then once again, I go to image and reveal all. Now we know that this globe is under this, it is hanging off the edge of this canvas. So I can use this, I can use the crop command, and what that would make this do is that would crop this image to what is visible. So the bottom part of this globe would be removed. So if I'm gonna go to select and select all, so I'm selecting everything that's visible, come to image and then crop. So now when I come in and reveal all, nothing's changed because there's nothing hanging off of this canvas. So we remove that over there. So now you see that I have cropped this image so that only what was visible is still visible. So there are a lot of different ways you can use your layers. Layers, once again, is one of the most important parts of Photoshop. Everything that you do is going to take place to a layer, and you need to make sure that you have the correct layer selected when you're working with that layer.